I'm Joanna Uribe, and I spent most of my life trying to change systems in healthcare and education. And I was born at a time when I got to be in my teens and my 20s, that the world was also changing very rapidly. And there was a lot of rebellion against the status quo, wanting to make society a better place. And I finally focused in on health and access to health, mental health, and the need for culturally competent services. And as a result of my life in the community, I began to be around people who were of the same mindset. Mm-hmm. And so when you coalesce and you create a little movement or a team of people, then you can do something if you're dedicated. So,
what was your childhood like, and how did it shape the values you hold today?
Well, I grew up in France. I was born in the United States, but I grew up in France because my father was studying art and my mother was studying literature. And I experienced being an outsider in France. Then when we moved back to the United States, I was an outsider in New York because I didn't speak English when I landed. So I had the experience of being in classrooms where I didn't understand a thing. And I got one of my godmothers got me into a French school, Lycée Français. And I had a wonderful time because I learned English finally, but I had my French. Mm-hmm. And then when the family moved out to Queens, I went to public school and managed from there in English until I graduated from high school. So,
and what about that journey do you think you carry with yourself today? How has that influenced your values and your future work?
Well, I've always felt like I'm like when a river hits the ocean, that water mixture that occurs, that's where I feel I'm working on the fronteras, on the frontiers or the between different cultures, different experiences, different cultural mores. And so it's like weaving yourself to make sense and pull the best from what you learn here in the river and what you learn in the ocean. Mm. And it makes you pay more attention to people and what they're saying. And I think my experiences helped me to identify with people who were in transition or crossing a bridge or building a bridge. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And how did you first get involved in community organizing and activism?
just, I can't remember, but I know we were in a very political time. And so everybody was belonging to groups or had causes that they were pursuing. Time of the Black Panthers, Los Siete de la Raza, and all that energy that was created by people who wanted to see change. And there was a lot of anger about the government and about the war in Vietnam. So I started with Los Siete de la Raza, the breakfast program in the mission, and then the clinic in the mission. And it was under Los Siete de la Raza, but I really didn't know who was making decisions about what. I was just sort of a worker. So if they needed to clean a room or prepare, like I clean things, I would do that. And it was like I was facilitating. And in that time, I was facilitating more with my body, serving children breakfast. And I was a soldier in that. So that's how it started. And the Clínica de la Raza in San Francisco, Los Siete Free Clinic, I think it was called.
Los Siete Free Clinic.
Yeah.
Do you remember cómo usted, how did you get to know about the Siete de la Raza? ¿Cómo fue ese principio? ¿Por qué se inclinó a trabajar con ellos?
Well, I lived in the neighborhood in the mission. I was Latina.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for things that would be possible to lend my physical body to. And when you're young, you travel through a lot of different groups and people, and you learn things. And there were there was young socialists, young communists, young whatever. The Black Panthers. So, but I wasn't going to meetings a lot. I'd get the word, or I'd give my palabra, and I'd go there for breakfast, open the place up. They'd bring food, I'd served it, that kind of thing. And Los Siete de la Raza was paralleling what the Black Panthers were doing, breakfast programs, medical services, and while that was going on, there was also another formal organizing group that had created the Mission Coalition. And then they made Child Care Committee, Work Committee, and I would go to those meetings because it was most organized, and they were part of a national organization that would go into communities and try to mobilize change and organize people So I went to child care committee and the work committee and employment. It was called employment committee. Those are kind of the two areas that I dealt with. And the result of that effort, the Mission Coalition, and I didn't know who the top people were. I was just, like I said, a soldier. They got a federal grant for organizing the community. And so with that, things like the language vocational school opened up, Mission Child Care. They would organize people to go to employers and demand employment for the community. And so it was that kind of energy. But what happened in looking back, that a lot of the energy and the energetic people got sort of siphoned into providing services. And although that was, really important, they weren't out organizing. So it's like the organizing energy, the sort of revolutionary zeal that we all had, became tempered, and it was not, because so much energy had to go into fundraising, program development, politics, that it was at that point that it became more community institutionalized. And, many of those programs are still going and providing services, and it's great. And so it was the kind of the evolution of how change seemed to be moving. Now, I was in it, so it was hard to see. I think I've come to these understandings in retrospect. If I probably would have complained a lot if I had understood at that time what was going on, which was giving us just enough in the community to meet needs and employ people, but not enough time or money to do a lot of planning at a grand community scale. You could do planning for your organization, you could do planning between two organizations, but there wasn't a movement that was trying to sort of rejigger how community develops. So, for example, in the mission, we totally missed the importance of people having property. There was a housing corporation, and yes, people did buy some houses, but it didn't change anything. It changed their lives, but it didn't go to the larger community. So then I became involved in health planning. And part of that was I went back to the School of Public Health. I went back to school for public health. And because I was not at that time a doctor or a nurse professional, a lot of the programs weren't open to me because they were hiring doctors to, they were educating doctors to lead community clinics and health planning. And so I ended up with 2 years in the School of Public Health, and my specialty was community mental health, and it was a big thing in those days because the government had created a master plan for organizing the health system. And I left San Francisco after my daughter was born and went to the Health Systems Agency in San Bernardino. And I worked there as a health planner. So I got an intensive education in writing community plans around different service systems. And my specialties were mental health, and I included domestic violence. It had not been one of the areas that the government was interested in. I said, I think has very serious health consequences, and only Vermont had begun discussions about it. And then I'd help with the other sectors of the health system, because the Health Systems Agency mandate was to try to consolidate duplication so that to lower the cost of healthcare, because you could have two hospitals and both had MRI, but the population didn't didn't qualify for two MRIs. So it was an attempt to create some balance in areas to make sure that services reached people and didn't duplicate. I left San Bernardino after a few years, went back to San Francisco, and the project that my personal project that I'd been working on was creating a mental health service community for Latinos and Chicanos. And when I went to San Bernardino, I stepped out of it. When I came back, the group had moved from the planning stages to the advocacy to get money from the state to start the service or to qualify as a mental health clinic. And that's how the project Instituto Familiar de la Raza rotando. It flowered, started flowering. And we were all very excited when we got the money, and I had missed a portion of the planning, but I was soon brought back in to sit on the board and later to prepare proposals and worked on defining a system of care for Latinos with mental health issues, understanding that they didn't like the terminology mental health. Salud y bienestar.
See. And well, you answered this question a little bit, so maybe we'll just do like a brief answer for this one. What was the Mission District like when you arrived in San Francisco in 1969, I believe?
Yeah.
And what were the main issues people were facing at that time? And then how did that evolve when you started at Instituto? And what were the main things you were trying to address?
Well, the majority Latinos were the largest population, but there were also white residents, and the face of San Francisco was in the Mission. But it was known as a Latino community, had lots of stores, restaurants, and people were, the rents were accessible at that time, but they, very soon sort of went up. And the political ambiente was trying to get money for the community. I mean, there were a lot of forces. I mean, you had the radicals on one end calling for revolution, and you had the community people looking for housing, services, and there were some services. There was a clinic, Mission Neighborhood Clinic, and in that clinic there was a mental health component, and the director there at the time, Arnaldo Solis, had begun to publish things about biculturality and bilingualism, and that just because you have a Spanish title on the door of the bathroom for hombres o mujeres, it was that was kind of where it stopped, and there was no effort. Well, they found that people wanted to come to them because they were doing things that made them feel comfortable in themselves. So that was, it was that little team in there with Concha Salcedo and a few others that then began to say, well, the clinic began to want them to leave because they didn't really agree with the political efforts of the mental health team to make the services bigger and more culturally competent. And that's when I got involved. Concha was teaching at Berkeley for a while, and they put together people who were interested in changing or creating something for the mission, for the Latino community that was culturally competent. So I think that's how I got in. I'm not sure. So I don't know. I wouldn't. If there were 7, I don't know who they are. I could guess at a few, but and I don't know that they would have included me in that. But there were. I mean, there was Ray Rivera, Ray Balberon, Patricia Perizatze, Esperanza Chavari, Juanita Quintero, me, some Santiago Ruiz. Well, that's 7.
Concha.
Y Concha.
Oh, that's it.
How about Stella?
No,
Él era después.
Stella is good.
she was hired to. No, she became the clinical coordinator, and then she became the director with Concha.
She was there for like 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, long time.
Wasn't Los Siete a police?
De la raza.
El Siete de la Raza.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was there were 7 Latinos that were caught in the police, or they were arrested. And out of that came the movement to try to get them support because it was unjust. That was Los Siete, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Not Siete organizers for mental health. That was a separate.
Yeah.
There was, Los Siete was a community coming together for Siete individual Chicanos who were unjustly arrested and put in jail and released. There was demonstrations and organizing around that. And that sparked a lot of the community, at least part of the community coming together to help that movement. And I guess out of that grew the clinic and feeding program like.
Yeah. It was just the tenor of the times.
Sí.
Yeah.
So. So I won't claim I'm one of the 7 until I hear it from Concha.
Well, you mentioned last time we saw you that you had this sort of poodle trip. I think it was it Oaxaca or somewhere in Mexico? And coming back from that trip, you were sitting there really writing the plans for Instituto.
A proposal.
Proposal.
Services.
I'm curious if before the trip or during the trip, there was a sort of like aha moment where like, oh, we need to do this. Either you or the people you were talking to, and it was like an impetus moment when you decided to put your energy into that.
There was always something to do. I don't know that there was a. I think it was. I was writing a grant proposal for SIDA, and I guess I told you the story that I sat in the airport waiting room while a plane was delayed, writing it while my daughter danced around and ate ice cream. And, but I was not the one who decided what I should do, but I spent a lot of time with Concha, and we talked, driving up to Sacramento and coming back, and so she said, "You're so boring," and
Your daughter saying,
yeah. But it was like our minds were always working, trying to figure out, what next, what to do with this when this happened, how to position something, a request. So we were like playing off each other. And so I did. I just felt it was such an organic process most of the time that I can't really say who began what and who.
You were saying that you had a lot of meetings at some restaurants and different places with some people involved, Concha, I guess, and you and others talking about how to do this. And this kept going on and on, like ideas,
Yeah.
discussions. But you and Concha were the primary thinkers about what to do, or was it the whole group organically putting ideas?
I don't remember. I mean, because I don't want to take credit where it was a group thing. I just felt like I was bouncing around the group, getting information, planning strategies, talking strategic moves and funding. But I was not in the throes of the daily activity at Instituto. I was just supporting them doing what they were doing.
Once it started, wasn't it was formed. But before that, as you were working the strategies with Concha and the group, because there was also political strategy. And the mayor was involved.
Yeah.
He was very helpful. There was some state legislator that was very helpful, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so all those pieces had to come together. So that's what you all were trying to strategize. How do you do that? Somebody contacted the mayor and he was very receptive. I guess he made some calls too and push some
Agnes, hard Agnos.
Yeah. And that's what I remember was that you guys were saying to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I was reading in the books and the facsimile that you gave it to me. The articles and everything. And I was I have a photo novela about the HIV SIDA.
Yes.
I wonder when that happened, you were around. Because for doing that you need to write a grant. No,
I didn't do that.
okay.
That was the SIDA program. Came up with the idea, and I was on the board, so I approved however a board needs to put the apoyo there.
There was also a film. Ojos que no ven.
They put a movie together.
Yes, about SIDA and Concha was in it, and it was actually a pretty good movie. Yeah, it's called Ojos que no ven.
It's the same of the fotonovela.
Yes.
Ojos que no ven.
Yeah.
I was reading all and I saw that it had to be fun to do some kind of thing, scenery.
Yeah, and it was one of the first Latino public efforts that acknowledged that there was SIDA in the community and we shouldn't ignore it.
Yeah.
Was this through Cia la Vida program?
SIDA.
Or did that come from, it was see SIDA and then you created Cia la Vida later?
Is there a reaction to it? Or
Yeah, I'm not sure when it all came together, but it was there, and
So in the early years, once it was formed, you're getting going. What were the main challenges that El Instituto faced?
knowing and how to manage a budget. That was, I mean, I tell people, go sit on a board if you want to learn how an organization works. Because I learned all about annual reports, audits, putting a budget together, and so that was one thing. What was the question?
What were the main challenges in the early years?
Well,
Many.
managing the money, getting the money, and then also there were times when community people would turn against us. More like with the CDAP project, that was the one that we were concerned about. And then they wanted ownership of the services. So
Who wanted ownership of which services?
the gay Latino activists, they didn't think that Instituto was culturally competent for their needs.
The gay community.
Yeah. And so, we kind of we backtracked and said, okay, what do you want? And Contra, had to negotiate with them, and we decided to give them some money so they could do some programming. So they were like a subcontractor for a while. And then when they proved they could do it, they went off on their own. But it was still a component that Instituto wanted to keep in terms of service delivery, because it was the whole family. And so that was one of the big issues at the beginning, several years in.
El Instituto has its 3 guiding principles. La cultura cura, en la que todo es entre yo, y si se puede. I'm curious if you could talk about all 3 of those, when and how they came into your thinking, into your day-to-day formations, blueprinting El Instituto. Maybe we start with la cultura cura.
We were looking for money from any funder that would allow us to do beyond mental health per se, because that was like a very formal governmental process for getting money. And you had to have charts and, the right kind of workers and all that. But there was also this whole other cultural arena. And we went after a grant with the Art Commission that placed an artist at the Instituto who worked with some members of the community in developing posters that were to animar la gente. So, tú eres mi otro yo, la cultura cura. The artist was Herbert Cifuentes. Yeah. Who later went on to become a comic.
So this artist came up with those.
Well, with Concha, I think with Concha and,
Again, I think one of the things that it's important to remember is not to kind of go like, this is where it started or this is where it came from, because it's an organic kind of development. It didn't start there, because once you have, people thinking about, let's bring cultura, la gente necesita cosas. They need some things that maybe the traditional system doesn't provide. Traditional system is you talk to a person in therapy or counseling, and you're very detached. It's detached objectivity. That's what we're taught in school, right? But la gente wants people to be gente. That's cultura. It's when you come in and you talk to them as gente, as people, and not just kind of sit behind and try to do some, a diagnosis and things like that. That's important too, especially for the funding. But it's not something that once you know what the cultura needs, the gente needs, and you're part of the cultura, the Chicanos, Latinos who grew up poor or grew up in, in traditional homes and stuff, with the negative and the positive things that are there. Then, but you also know that, it's important to have people that are struggling with mental health issues because of racism. It's important to know that they're struggling with mental health issues because of their positions of being discriminated against and being in poverty. The generational trauma of that as well, So once understanding that, la cultura cura. You have to teach people. There was one instance of a Native American writer who said, we gave an example of, he had written a book and stuff like that, but he also said, there was this one man gave a testimony. He says, I'm a Native American, and I was always so sad and so angry. I was so very angry and very sad, and my family would go, why are you so angry and so sad? Why are you so sad? When he read this book about the culture and the traumas and things like that, it went off in his head. He said, I know why I'm so sad now. I know why it happened. And then he transformed. He said, I could joke with my family. I could communicate with them more because now I understood why I feel that way. And I think that's the way the cultura cura is, when you begin to understand those things. And those things are that are intrinsic to culture, language, familia, that you begin to have better understanding of yourself and a more positive self-awareness and ego strength, that you begin to feel better, right? So that's what the cultura. So it doesn't start like, started it, we discussed it, and it was like, it's more like an organic way of developing that. Is what you guys were working on. And, so, en la quech, tú eres mi otro yo, that's very important also in our culture, and it's more of a teaching that doesn't always translate, because en la quech just means everything is interrelated.
Tú eres mi otro yo.
Tú eres mi otro yo. That's what en la quech means. You are my other me. And that's part of the problem with the whole world, actually, but especially in la cultura, is that we know that, right? So anyway, it's important. We know that intrinsically, familia is very important to us.
Sí. No, thank you for pointing that out. We have this bias premising the start of it. What was the clinical 1, 2, 3? But that's not how it is.
Then you apply that to the clinical, because you have to have a diagnosis. It's like, what is your diagnosis? 295.32 diagnostic statistical manual, ESM-35 or whatever it is now.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Joanna, when you began to, you were telling us about your beginning, what you did, but can you tell us an anecdotic experience, remarkable that stay with you until now, when you were in the board or when you were with Concha Salcedo, going from one or planning one strategy or going from one place to other?
something that stands out.
Yeah, something that you can tell about this experience. Something funny, something sad, something that make you angry too.
Un momento.
I don't really have anything that stands out. I know that I for one of the fairs, the street fairs where we would go to educate people, outreach, that kind of thing, that I brought the helium and the balloons. And they were very popular. And then when I went to go home and to return the helium, I had almost no brakes in my car. So it was like, oh my God, I'm doing this stuff and I'm not even paying attention to taking care of myself because I was trying to, I had taken on that task. And let's see what else. It was always, and I don't know how to answer that question.
You did it. You did it beautifully. That with that answer we can see your commitment to the people and to help the Instituto Familiar de la Raza, and that's something that when you turn yourself into the cause, you immerse there totally forgetting even about your own self.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, so I need to ask you about dancing. When you started dancing, what drew you to that and how that's influenced your worldview?
Well, Concha was my daughter's godmother. And we were walking around the mission. We went to the cultural center to see a danza group or class that they were sponsoring at the Mission Cultural Center. And that's where the idea of danza was introduced to me. And I just kept, I used Xochitl as my entrance, and the danzante circle wasn't too big at the time, so I was encouraged to join the group, and when Manuel and I got together, he was a danzante from Texas, so it was very natural. It was part of my social community and my spiritual community. And then I had the sort of economic neighborhood community. And there was a political community. So it was, but what I found was that danza brought to me the spiritual aspect of being who I was into a framework with somos uno, tú eres mi otro yo, the four directions. And in fact, the four directions became so ingrained in me that whenever I would make charts or technical things, I'd always use sort of the four directions. You know, you have community, you have individuals, you have organizations, and you have something. You know, it depended on what the proposal was for, but my professional thinking and organizing of information, I used the template of the four directions.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense because I remember looking through those pamphlets that you gave me when we first met. It was a lot of different models. And I was thinking, like, these are so clear and they're so unique. And they felt very in touch with what you were trying to describe.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of from your career and community work?
That I got out alive. I think the work in helping, but I'm most proud of helping young people because, you know, I became a mentor to some, I became a teacher to others, and that, you know, that to me felt like moving the energy forward when my energy was flagging. So it's the work with the young people. The other thing is, I think I'm proud of how I incorporated the spirit of the four directions as an underpinning to all my work. So I felt like connected to the spiritual and grounded, and it grounded my perspective. See what else? Well, my proposals got funded. A lot of it, and Estela likes to joke on the $10 million woman or something. She said, I'm keeping track of all the grants you write. But what I liked was when I was teaching the grant making class, and it was, you know, kind of ad hoc. The youth would come in, sit on the floor and on a chair and break down how you did grant making. That's probably the last papers I'd throw out or shred. And then
Tell them about the reason you got from the young woman.
oh, there was a young woman who called me and she said, I have to tell you, I got it. I finished a grant. And I was thinking how you helped us back then. I mean, I have it on tape. I can play for you. But yeah, it was such an affirmation. And, you know, another one came up to me earlier on. He said, I wrote a grant. We got the money. And I put some poetry into it because I told them all, don't be afraid to put a little poetry in it because you're painting a picture for people. You're trying to engage their emotional attention. And so just, you know, it's like el sazon on the magic crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I wanted to know, when was the time that you decide that you no longer will work with the community? But you haven't finished your work there, or you
Oh
continue?
no, I feel I finished my work at Instituto, and there's a whole other layer of people now. But it's nice to see that it's still going, it's still being funded. What I did was I moved to the next level, a community level, and violence prevention and peace, pushing for peace. And so when there was funding when the California Foundation put out requests for proposals for violence prevention, I pulled organizations together that I had written stuff with and supported two organizations, RAP, the Real Alternatives Program, and the
Roadmap to Peace. Oh, that's
No.
what rap turned into.
yeah, that's what it turned into. No, it was another organization that had very strong ties to the Central American community.
Cadesa?
Carecen.
Is that an acronym?
Yes. Central American.
Refugee,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. They work with it.
Yeah. And they're still around. But what we had to do was I worked with one guy, Mitchell Salazar, who was a mover and a shaker in the mission and a crazy man. I loved him. And so he'd have ideas. I'd write up letters. I'd write up proposals. I'd write up position papers. And then he'd go and do the money thing. So we were a team. We called each other co-pilots. And he has since passed away of cancer. But he got me into all kinds of things in multiple communities. And could you help this friend of mine? He's trying to get a grant. And, it was like a church-related effort to support like juveniles at the Juvenile Justice Center. And by that, so I was, sort of still, Concha is my comadre. So, we could still talk about stuff.
Including yesterday.
And so I did a lot of work with violence prevention and peace. We changed it to the Peace Initiative because I had a dream. And the dream was, you're going at it backwards. You got to go. You've got to name your effort, what you're trying to achieve. So we weren't just going to hold back violence prevention, but we were going to promote peace. So we had a whole planning system that the foundation, wanted. And I worked with the health committee mostly. And sort of took the concepts of Instituto to another level of community consciousness and awareness, involving, people and so I was their documenter, the documentor, and the fundraiser, and Mitchell was a hustle. And he had ties in the Black community, the Asian community, the Samoan community. So I got dragged around to all those places.
Nice.
And my experience informed me so much. And when the Department of Social Services was trying to figure out how to allocate some money, I think, or start an initiative, I was in the planning group for the department, and everybody was sort of pushing for their community to get some of it. And I said, well, if truth be told, and you look at statistics and data, which I had put together, you will see that the African American community is the community most hurting with violence and least funded. And that kind of changed the dialogue in the planning. And one of the staff people came up to me later and said, thank you for saying that. Because, it's you don't want to, no, I didn't want to be part of something that was just going to be standard, this divided up into 4 communities or something. There wasn't enough money, and everybody would get an amount, but the African American community needed more. So by that time, I'd worked in all the communities, and I just wasn't going to play the game. I was going to speak the truth, which I knew the staff would appreciate, because they felt they couldn't do it because of politics. So I began to start speaking truth to power, as it were. And getting exasperated by the end of, I remember a meeting in the Department of Children and something or other, which had been created. And I was working with a guy from Visitation Valley. And I went to support him because he hadn't done some things that they wanted him to do. And I just said, and I was so fed up with the bureaucracy. I mean, that's, what eventually drove me nuts. And I said, just check the boxes. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you've checked the boxes. That's what they're looking for.
What are the boxes?
Well, when you make a report and you tell them what you've been doing, and it's like a formula. Grants have a formula for evaluating their efficacy, to use their terminology. And I knew that what they were asking for wasn't even important. But the director of the program was so flustered because he just, he was holding this whole thing together. And one of the women in the meeting said, Joanna, would you like a cup of tea? Because I was getting so agitated at the bureaucracy. I mean, that's what really drove me away, was the bureaucracy. And I didn't want to become a political person. I just didn't. I had opportunities, but I turned them down. And so I could be just focused on speaking truth about community. And it started out with the Latino community, and then it got bigger. Poor people, the Asians, the Blacks, and I finally got so fed up I got Parkinson's. But yeah, that's
How long ago you get Parkinson?
13, 14 years.
You know, you have done so much, and many people don't understand how, because you work certain strategic,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a strategic part of all of this, that is a NGO, or that is a foundation, that is a center. You work behind curtain, that your work was so important, you know, because without funding, people don't go ahead. You know, all this initiative die. And you know, there are many people that doesn't know how to run, and there is a lot of, I don't know if it's a little bit what you can call people that are callous, that doesn't get sensitive with the issues that you try to do. You know, it's a dance, like you said, and you put a little bit of poetry in it. But what could be your best your best teaching for the new generation that wanted to put in plan? You know, we are in complex political time, and people are, I don't know if it's the same or more needed than it was before, because there are complications that wasn't by that time, you know. Apparently, in those times, in the 17s, even in the 80s, things were straight, you know. The government opposed, and you respond, and you get it. But now there are
It's crazy.
other kind of, you know, it's a more complex way of attacking, of not giving the right to the poor. You know, there are internet, there are policemen, there are persecution, you know, and you feel like you have surveillance everywhere that you move, everywhere.
Yeah.
No. And then
So
what is in this complication? What is your message for the new people that wanted to do something for the community? What is it?
I think you have to pursue what has meaning to you. One, you have to be realistic about what you can achieve. You can have a vision, but if the grantor is only willing to give 50,000, you have to create a budget within that, or create a large budget, but you then speak to the
To the donors.
to the donor, and I think you need to somehow catch their heart in terms of what you're going to try to do for the population. So you know you have to be persuasive about the needs of people. And, I know now that so many grants are 500 words, 300 words, 50. What is your mission? And it's all on the computer. So it's more difficult. That's why poetry comes in, because if in a little phrase can capture, like one of the things that I wrote in one proposal was the streets are their living room. I was trying to get money for troubled youth.
Excuse me. The streets are the living.
Their living room. So, they're at risk of a lot of things as a result. So, I mean, it's not poetry in flores,
Yeah.
but it's a picture.
Yeah.
So you have to have a feeling for the people you're writing for. And I know that the proposals that didn't get funded, the people who had hired me to write, weren't clear in themselves what they were asking for. So it was, I couldn't make up, because, and then that's a very, that's a difficult balance to write something when the people that are asking for it don't know what they're asking for.
Yeah.
So sometimes, so those were the ones that didn't get funded, because I couldn't carve it with them. They didn't hear what they needed to do. So
I have a bit of a different question.
mm-hmm.
So you had mentioned before that throughout your career, your título was voluntaria, which for me is very hard to imagine going through a whole career without being paid. And I understand it's a different time.
But I had jobs.
But you had jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of El Instituto?
Oh, yeah. I didn't work for Instituto I never got paid for.
Okay.
But I worked for the health department.
Okay.
I was a family planning coordinator for the city.
Uh-huh.
I was a planner. So I had jobs.
Okay.
And I tried not to get jobs in the community.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to be seen as someone who was getting my money from them.
That it was a self-serving kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And when you get embedded in an organization, the staff, all the community politics of those organizations, make you dizzy. So by being outside or as a consultant, gave me more freedom to say things, and no one was my boss in the community work.
But that make your job with the Instituto Familiar de la Raza more honest and valuable, because you were given your free time for a long time.
Right.
You know, I guess that's what Christina wanted to ask, you know, that you were volunteer for many years to the Institute. And with your work, you inspire many people. And you, right now, with this, you are inspiring people. And I wanted to know a little bit if Cristina, con el perdón de Cristina, to ask, how do you feel giving your time? What was the commitment that you have with the Instituto Familiar de la Raza, that you were working so long with them as a voluntary base?
Well, one was my relationship with Concha, which was a very creative relationship. And
That you believe in what you were doing.
yeah, oh, absolutely. I don't know what motivated me. It took a lot of energy because at one time I was working in Marin, going to board meetings in San Francisco. My daughter was in the East Bay. There's just a lot of things I was,
To balance.
yeah. So the question was, what?
Well, how do you love to work? What was your commitment with el Instituto Familiar de la Raza?
Well, I believed in its mission. It was about family. It was about strengthening family and strengthening individuals within the context of their family and within the context of the community. So it seemed like a win-win sort of, and any way we could do it, you know, we went for funding in social services after a while. We went for, we created alliances with the different, Concha, created alliances with different organizations, and then I would facilitate the meetings and stuff like that, write the stuff up. It was, but because the basis was el corazón, el espíritu de la gente, el espíritu de la comunidad. It just seemed like there was a whole enchilada.
This is great.
I guess for me with the volunteering question, I hadn't understood that you had jobs outside of an institute. I had understood you were 100%.
Oh, okay.
Because of how much work you did. So I was thinking about the gendered aspect of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious if that was a conversation, either early days, later days, or something that you've reflected on now. If gender has played a role in what kinds of things you felt compelled to work on, or what the social environment was like. I've heard other people who organized a lot in the 70s and 80s that they moved from group to group because of sexism in the organizing communities.
I ignored it.
You ignored it.
It's like, do what you want to do, and if you're not going to come on board, I'm not going to worry about it. And if you're going to come on board and you're going to mess this up, I'm not going to worry about it. You know, I think most of the men knew that I could do what I could do, and gave me my due. I did not get caught up in the gender thing. I mean, there were a few guys who were awful, and I just said, I'm never working with that person again. And even if, like, Mitchell wanted me to work on something with that person, nope. because I didn't appreciate people who didn't pull their weight. It was really, you deliver, you're good. You don't deliver and you make me look bad, you're out. And if you don't deliver and nobody knows that, you're out anyway. I'm not going to mess around with all the things that you bring as a man. So, I said, a la chingada.
That says it all.
Yeah. Well, when you said the, okay, una más, entonces,
As just like a parting thought,
Mm-hmm.
what advice or message would you like to share with younger generations today?
Do what your heart tells you to do. Don't put up with bullshit. Be true to your heart and surround yourself with people who will support you. And don't be full of yourself. Don't think you know it all. There's always somebody, who has useful information or can do it better. So just nose to the grindstone and one foot in front of the other. And sometimes you'll find yourself going doom, 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 3 feet backwards. But if you take one step, and then a little later another step, you'll have found the way to make the third step. So it's just be true to your heart. And, I mean, I don't know what the younger generation is like really anymore because things in the exterior world have changed so much with the technology, the ideology. So if you want to make a change, do it. You'll find your way. Find the people who will support you. And love them for what they do. It's about love for the tú eres mi otro yo. That's what it is. So if you think things are not right, well, go out and find some people who think the same thing and you do something about it. But there's a lot of young people, even in my own family, it's like party time, it's they're very, ¿cómo se dice? They've given up hope. So they act smart or funny, but at the core, they have no hope. So I think it's a very hard time for young people. I mean, you may have all the clothes you want and all the music you want, but you need, not you, but people need to be seen and heard. And a lot of people are shut down at a very young age by their teachers, by the society, by their family. So when you find people who have juice, that's what you want to be around.
How will you know when they have juice?
When they have juice, when the things that they want to talk about or question are beyond their self-interest.
Eso.
This is, in Spanish, there is a proverb that say, caras vemos, corazones no sabemos.